Then There's California, a podcast featuring members of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus in conversation about their legislative priorities, their lives, their opinions, and perspectives that help make California exceptional. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Today, as we speak, is Willie L. Brown Jr. Day at the state capitol, a day where we are commemorating the first African-American and the longest-serving Assembly Speaker in the history of the California legislature, and the first African-American mayor of San Francisco, on the occasion of his 90th birthday, which was actually back in March, but we're still celebrating. But this history-making and longevity-acclaiming celebration here at the Capitol is also a privileged opportunity for us on this edition of Then There's California to have the chance to share hindsight and foresight with two black lawmakers, one retired and one wrapping up his legislative career this fall, who in their respective eras as politicians and leaders have not only done more to give voice and parity and power and access to their communities, but all communities of color across the state, and who have worked to find principal common ground with diverse parties and interests. Willie Lewis Brown Jr. was elected to represent San Francisco in the State Assembly in 1964, becoming one of the most powerful state legislators in the country, and he served 30 years in the Assembly. He was Assembly Speaker for nearly 15 years, from 1980 to 1995, and where he was my boss, actually, for 5 of those years, and then served 2 terms as the 41st mayor of San Francisco from 1996 to 2004. Among other legislative notes of distinction, Mr. Brown authored the state's seatbelt law and the landmark progressive policy that legalized all sexual conduct between 2 consenting adults. Other politicians have come and gone, as they say, but Willie Brown has endured. Senator Stephen Bradford represents California's 35th Senate District in Southern California, including his hometown of Gardena. He's the former chair and now vice chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. Before he was elected as an Assembly member in 2009 and then to the Senate in 2017, he was the first black man elected to the Gardena City Council. He continues as chair this session in 2024 of the Senate Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee, and was a legislative appointee to the recently convened California Reparations Task Force. And of course, he is the catalyst behind several groundbreaking social justice and criminal justice reform and equity ensuring policies. We are here in this Willie Brown conference room, appropriately named, adjacent to the Assembly Speaker's office, for a podcast fireside chat, I guess we'll call it, with these two distinguished, always sartorially impressive gentlemen. Senator Bradford, Mayor Brown, what a rare treat to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Mr. Brown.
Nice to be here.
Your 90th birthday has been celebrated now for several
90
months.
years.
Now, yes. How does it feel to be back here today and be celebrated like that?
I can tell you that it is mind-blowing. I had no idea how this matter would go, but the membership of both houses evidenced an appreciation for the time that I spent being a part of the legislative process, extended a welcome as if I was still a member. And that is unbelievable. I'm still literally blown away by the nature of what has occurred on this, the Willie Brown Day at the Capitol.
You're no stranger to the Capitol since you left here, of course. A lot of new faces, a lot of children of the lawmakers that you served with a few decades ago, a lot of reuniting here.
I got to tell you, though, when they started discussing all these young people, I realized instantly that, wait a minute, some of those people were not even born when I first got elected to the legislature. So somebody had to be telling them long before this day and this time about what life was like in the halls of the legislature and how, in one manner or another, I have been perceived as being a part of the positive side of that process. And that is incredible. That's really a great honor. You know, I've received a lot of accolades and a lot of saying, you okay. But I don't think that anything matches this particular opportunity for the organization and the house and the institution that exposed me to what could be, and the membership in each one of those places that would ultimately allow what could be to actually happen and be supportive of what could be happening. And I'm very, very pleased that I was a member.
A lot has changed, but a lot hasn't. What do you notice when you walk around here?
Well, first of all, I'm really upset and concerned that the building that I was almost living in is gone.
Yes.
The parking space that I richly loved is gone. I mean, it's amazing how the structure is being altered. Not so much the Capitol. The Capitol itself is a historical building, so you can't play around with it too much. What I am amazed at, though, is how well kept the Capitol building has been since I first signed off and had it redone. But I just I can't adjust to the fact that I can't even walk around in the park. There's so much going on. So I can't wait, frankly, for the steps that are being taken and sincerely being taken. And then suddenly there will be an extension of what has been an effort by the state Senate and the state assembly with David Roberti and Willie Brown as we did the Capitol. And we did it right. And I'm frankly going to wait around before I leave this planet
to see it all finished.
For they to finish. They got to finish it.
That's right. For
before
your sake,
I split. I got to tell you, though, that the attention given, ordinarily, you're dead when people do these kinds of things.
So you get to hear all the good things said about you while you're still around to appreciate it and hear it.
As if I wrote them.
Right, exactly. Senator Bradford, of course, you are no stranger to this Capitol. You've served plenty of years here. We've talked so much about the mentorship that Willie Brown has given. I don't know where he was when you were on the Gardena City Council, but how did you guys wind up meeting? How did you wind up connecting?
I first met Mr. Brown at a BAPAC event in 1988. One of his former staffers and my dear friend, the late Darnell Cooley, introduced me to Mr. Brown. And I used to love Mr. Brown. Cooley! Cooley, get over here. And Darnell and I, Mr. Brown and I became acquaintances. And then I attended many of the session basses through Darnell's invitation as well. And I remember one night even meeting Ed Dwight, the acclaimed sculptor artist, and you introduced me to him, and I appreciate it. Astronaut, exactly. Yeah. First Black astronaut. Correct. Should have been the first in space, without a doubt. And it was through that. And just throughout the years, our paths crossed, and Mr. Brown is probably not aware of this, but I was running for city council for the first time in 1990. And you freed up Sam Walton, and he helped me, and he would call me in the evening to make sure, but he was like, I got clearance from Speaker Brown to help you with this campaign. I wasn't successful in that race. I lost by 400 votes, but that meant so much to me that he had released one of his trusted staffers to aid me in my effort to become an elected official. So I truly appreciate that and remember that to this day.
And here you are, fast forward in 2024, one of his hosts for his Willie Brown Jr. Day.
I'm honored to be a part of this because it's long overdue and most deserving for sure.
As I mentioned in the opening, you both have and had this reputation of being bipartisan, common ground lawmakers, devoted to your communities, you fight for your communities, but you're willing to work across the aisle and sometimes work with those who are polar opposites in your styles and in your political beliefs and your philosophies. You have to get along, but you also have to know how to work the system. That was something, Mr. Brown, I know you imparted to a lot of people, is you got to know how to work the system, which is as much a key to success as collaboration.
Well, let me tell you, I absolutely know that it's necessary to produce a result if you've been given the opportunity by way of votes from your district. And the results would make themselves known very easily and very quickly. If you get results, you got to figure out from the day you take the oath that if it takes 21 votes to move an item, you better get 21 votes out of 40. If you're a state senator, you get 41 votes out of 80 if you're a state assembly member. In each of those categories, you can't rely upon a political party to produce those numbers for you. you have to produce those numbers yourself. And that means you got to produce the numbers from the membership. There's nobody else. And believe me, you cannot assume that there's any member that can't be persuaded to vote for your bill. That's what you go about doing. And when you get to 41, in my case, or 21 in the senator's case, you better add 2, 3 more, because invariably somebody will find a way under some circumstances for not keeping their commitment or keeping their word. So you got to be careful that happens, but you can't even out them, because you might need them for the next measure you have. Right. So you want to be very careful. You get your 21 and you get your 41, then you got to work on the governor. So there's a long ways from announcement that I have a solution and actually producing the result that can legitimately be a solution. That means work with all 40, work with all 80, and cut the herd when you can afford to cut them.
I assume, Senator Bradford, you concur mightily?
Totally. And one of the first lessons I got from Mr. Brown was about relationships. And he made it very clear, you got to talk to everybody. And that's one of the things I've done since being here. And I'm always moved when I get a text in the middle of the day from a Republican. And again, as I've stated on the floor, Bill Duplessis has shared more Willie Brown stories to me than just about anybody. And he loved Willie Brown, and he shared how Willie Brown knew their spouses, knew their kids, knew their birthdays. And it was about, like I say, having those real relationships that went beyond party, went beyond issue. And that's how you are able to maneuver around here. I mean, I remember a real tough bill I was doing that had been run numerous times before I got here, trying to get full police status for LAX police officers. And it had gone down numerous times. They might even ran it during your tenure here. And I remember my last day, it's on Assembly Approach, and it's coming off of suspense. I could lose 2 votes. I couldn't lose 3. And when they brought the bill up, 3 Democrats peeled on me. And 10 minutes before the committee was going to gavel out, the chairman says, "Hey, I'm going to gavel out at 3 o'clock. Do you have your votes?" I went over to 2 Republicans, Frank Bigelow and Diane Harkey. And they both went up and they saved that bill for me. And we not only got it out of approach, we got it off the floor, we got it to the Senate, and it got signed into law. But if it wasn't for those 2 Republicans, it would have died like it had done for the last 20 years.
I'm going to involve you, Mr. Brown, in some current events here at the Capitol, a process I know you're very familiar with, the state budget, finally getting an agreement, notwithstanding the fiscal challenges that you faced during your years on the budget and those that Senator Bradford and his colleagues have faced this year. I guess the word I could use, are you envious of the ease to which the legislature is able to resolve the budget nowadays?
I'm amazed, frankly, with the numbers of Democrats that are in both houses. No one had those kind of numbers, either in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. I've never seen numbers like that. I was talking to the speaker earlier today, and he says there are 62 members.
Would you want 62?
No.
Exactly.
Oh, no. Are you kidding me? I don't want to be bothered with any numbers like that. And I'm blown completely away. The governor happens to be a Democrat. And believe me, it means all 80 members must be enticed to participate in the budget. And participate in the budget means that building that you want to get on your college campus is coming, but only when you vote for the building on somebody else's college campus.
I guess you would have given anything to have actually had a Democratic governor.
Well, I must tell you that I really measure the governors in my years by how good they were at following my leadership.
Right.
So I got along with all of them.
Well, you were actually, because of that relationship and with your Republican colleagues, you were able to, I would say, stymie some of the deeper cuts and elimination of a lot of progressive policies.
Let's go back to Reagan. Reagan signed the Bielsen bill Senator Belison's bill was the first time Roe v. Wade passed in any state. That was Tony Belison carrying the bill, and Reagan signed it. Now, why would Reagan sign that bill? First of all, I think his wife was helpful in particular, but there was a working relationship between the Senate, the Assembly, and Reagan. When Reagan needed something, he knew he could call on the then Jim Mills or somebody of that ilk to be helpful. When he needed something in my house, he called on either Bob Moretti or he called on a combination of us who were the dissidents, so to speak, in that administration. And we produced what we needed to produce. So there needs to be a discussion at all times, even before you get to the line items, so that you can somehow reach an accord. We had to teach Wilson that when he, on one occasion, decided to do something that didn't make any sense to public education.
Right. He wanted to eliminate kindergarten. Wasn't that what it was?
He saw that on a billboard.
Yeah.
That we put up there. It was not long, however, before he realized that if he wanted to pass a budget, there had to be real dialogue.
Yeah.
And he did develop that dialogue. Now, on the other hand, Duke Majan signed the bill that divested any involvement in the pension systems of California with South Africa, right, as long as Mandela was in jail. That was something that Duke Majan signed. And Duke Majan also signed a bill by Mike Roos. That was the assault weapon ban that Diane finally got solved in D.C. and got signed, but hers was on a limited basis. Mike Roos's was not on a limited basis. And it was because of the working relationship between the individuals who held public office and could do the voting. And that all came because of acquaintanceship, knowledge, and a built-in relationship, as Senator described it.
And Senator Bradford, you have been blessed, if you will, with Democratic governors through this budget process and a simple majority vote for a budget, but it hasn't been easy, has it, at all?
No.
Regardless.
I came in 2009 when we were facing the worst deficit since the Great Depression in California, and we had 2 hard years, and it required a whole lot of maneuvering, a whole lot of negotiations. I mean, we had our pay docked. I mean, we didn't get paid for 2 months. I mean, things of that nature. And before you needed a simple majority, it was still a 2/3 vote. And I remember watching both houses, maneuver that. But we saw the difference once I got back in the Senate and on the end of Assembly time when we had a flush budget with reserves. And it changed our relationships there and operating and how we were able to do a lot of things for California and prioritize our values through our budget. But this year it's tough again.
But in particular this year, I know part of the budget this year includes $12 million to help implement the series of reparation measures that you and your Legislative Black Caucus colleagues have put in. That's extraordinary considering everybody was worried that those were going to go on the chopping block with this budget.
I think it's a great statement. It's a reflection of our values. It's a reflection of our priorities, and it states not only to Californians, but to the rest of the nation that reparations is a priority.
Yeah.
And many people say, why California? But we have an obligation to right this wrong. And I'm glad California has seen we wanted more money, but under this tough situation, budget time, to get $12 million, we're ecstatic. At least I'm ecstatic for it. So,
Mr. Brown, let me talk about reparations with you. Notwithstanding the divestment from South Africa during apartheid and even the federal government during your time with reparations for Japanese survivors of internment camps, do you think reparations, a discussion about it, or action like this could have happened during your time in the legislature?
It did not happen. No one raised the question because we were busy trying to take care of the horror that this nation had imposed upon American citizen who just happened to be of Japanese ancestry. I am pleased, frankly, that that subject matter is now on the table with reference to Black folk whose heritage goes all the way back to their being the end product of people who were enslaved and purchased and mistreated in every fashion you can think of. And clearly, this nation ought to be about trying to correct that. The concept of a 40 acre and a mule, I still believe in.
Do you think that things have regressed over the years, as much progress as there have been made, if I can ask you candidly?
There have been progress made, but not progress that represents any reason why we should stop. You understand that when you're in a position where a guy as significant as Willie Mays was to all of baseball, in a city like San Francisco, he could not get a house of his choice because in that city, in the late 50s, early 60s, when he was addressing the issue, in San Francisco, of all places, that was not permitted. Now, I must tell you that as we were struggling for his, I ended up on the front page because Blanche, my wife, and a girlfriend of hers went to just look at a house.
In that housing complex.
Correct. And were denied the opportunity to even look. But based on what had occurred in the Willie Mays situation, in which a Republican mayor, George Christopher, had interceded, and Willie got an opportunity to buy in Forest Hills, where he wanted to get a house. He had managed to get a house, but the legislative body of the city, with the leadership of the Republican mayor, had started the process of fair housing in San Francisco. And the efforts that we generated with the demonstration on behalf of the Brown clan resulted in the fair housing law being passed in San Francisco before it was passed in the state of California as the Bradford Act. And I said that that's so recent. Yeah. This nation is plagued with the same kind of attitude that prompted the Civil War.
Senator Bradford, your comment on that?
I totally agree. And I mean, my time in the legislature, when you look at some of the most egregious laws on the books, they were direct results of emancipation and freed blacks. When you look at use of deadly force that we had dealt with 5 years ago, deadly force didn't come to play in California to 1872. 7 years after we were free, they all decided law enforcement needed this tool to. It was no run on crime. We see vagrancy and trespassing laws. Many of those hit the books when African Americans was free. So we're still addressing much of that. Discrimination in housing. A lot of times when we talk about housing nowadays, it's talking about zoning. People don't know the history of zoning. It was in 1948 that Lauren Miller and Thurgood Marshall won the Supreme Court case to eliminate restrictive covenants. But cities then responded in 1950 with zoning laws. So now we hear many times, oh, you can't do that because it's R1. That replaced restrictive covenants. And we don't know the racial history behind all of that. So the challenges are still real, as Mr. Brown stated. We just see it in a little bit more covert ways, but it's still very much a challenge to much of what we do. Race plays a part in a lot of things.
Thank you for sharing that, both of you. As we wrap things up here, talk about legacy. Senator Bradford, as you are ready to wrap up your legislative career here this fall, legacy may be on your mind. What does legacy mean to you both in this time?
I think my legacy, I hope it says I was effective. I was present. I made a difference. I've never done this to be patted on the back, or it was never about me. It was about doing the real work. And I hope people say he did the real work. I'm proud to say, absent COVID, I've never missed a day. 12 years as a city council person, never missed a city council meeting. And my 14 years here, other than those COVID quarantine periods that we had to go through, I've never missed a day of legislature. So I would like folks to say he was present, he was accountable, and he was effective. And that's the best legacy I can have. And I think my legislative package, I think, speaks to it. When you talk about Bruce's speech, police decertification,
yes,
NIL, Ebony Alert. I mean, we've tried to do legislation that has had real impacts on people's lives for the positive. So even supplier diversity and the cannabis space and making sure that everybody had a seat at the table. So I hope that speaks.
Absolutely. Mr. Brown, even if you didn't want to think about legacy, the rest of the world reminds you of the legacy you had. You're no stranger to legacy conversation. What do you have to say?
Well, for me, I really want the world to know, one, that I was here. When I was here, I did a good job. But equally as important, that I left really talented people expected to replicate what I attempted to do and succeed as best they can with the same level of commitment and pride that I had. And if I can regularly refer to folk who are doing it now and what I was doing then, that's my legacy.
Speaking of, you kind of a perfect entree into this next question. In your book, you wrote that you used to tell freshman lawmakers that the beginning of their careers was not an arrival, it's a leaving, not a fulfillment, but a start. I know what you meant. You explained it in your book. Tell the listeners what you mean by that.
There is no such thing as the end of your career, period. And you must never think that way if you're going to go into the business of public policy making. The skill set which you have acquired to get there, i.e. the voters' approval, and you've repeated that often enough, you really have already received the appreciation and the acknowledgement of who you are and what you're about. That then means you're competing with that happened behind you by what you do in front of you. And that's the legacy.
Senator Bradford, in that context, your advice, so to speak, to younger lawmakers, new lawmakers who may be taking your place?
Be present. I mean, be engaged as always, get involved. And as one gentleman once told me, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Make sure the right people know you. And I was honored to know that Mr. Brown knew who I was as I was coming up, and that was important. And I would just tell young folks that it's no clear path. You just got to keep working and be committed to make a change and be a positive influence in your community. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, we can all be great because we can all serve. So have a servant's heart.
Final question. We could go on for hours, gentlemen. There's so many things we could talk about. Your reflections on the state of California, the state that you served, what's ahead for the future? What do you think of California? Mr. Brown.
California has blessed with really talented people holding public office. There are just no other state that can compare with the quality of the people in the 58 counties, with the quality of the people, for an example, in the 276 cities in Los Angeles County alone. It's really amazing how many talented people treat the opportunity to serve as people treat a medical license, or as people treat a law license, or as people treat an engineering license. It's just amazing that the world of public policy making, uniquely in California, is viewed equally as important, period. And that, I think, is how blessed we really are. And it's amazing how there's no other state that gets the kind of acknowledgement from world leaders that California gets in directing the traffic of life in its state. And that's what I love.
Senator Bradford.
I would totally agree with that. It's often said, so goes California, so goes the nation, but many times so goes the world. And as my time as a legislature and on international trips, I met with world leaders that were more excited about meeting with California legislators than they were with the president of the United States from 2016 to 2020. I mean, they were happy that California had to come there. And it's due to the influence that we have on so many issues, technology, the environment, justice. And I think we're the North Star, and we continue to be that. We still have a lot to improve upon. I mean, we're not perfect, and many people find us to be that super progressive state, and in many ways we're not. So we just got to continue to expand upon that which we've created because of people like Mr. Brown who preceded me and the folks who will follow us, that we continue to make people first, make that a priority. And I think that's what California does better than most other states. So,
and we are uniquely, actually, not just a state, we are really a nation.
Cannot think of a better way to wrap this. Gentlemen, it's sure been a wonderful privilege to have you both here in the same room at the same time with your perspectives. And I hope for both of you, just the chance to chat and mind meld a little bit on some of these issues. So
it's a great honor for me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green.
This was routine for him.
Oh, well.
This was special for me. You know what I'm saying? He's probably done this with kings, and queens, and presidents.
You're royalty then. So that's
all right.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much for being part of this. It's an honor. Best wishes, Mr. Brown. We'll see you at 100.
Only 100?
Just say next time, when you do this again,
God bless you both. State Senator Stephen Bradford of Gardena, representing California's 35th Senate District, the Vice Chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, and Willie L. Brown, Jr., Assembly Speaker Emeritus and San Francisco Mayor Emeritus on this Willie L. Brown, Jr. Day at the California State Capitol. And that is a wrap for this edition of Then There's California. We're a production of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus with technical assistance and production support from John Roman, Nick Boulay, Marvin Richardson, Michelle Baker, McLeana Woods, and the graphic design artistry of Tim Davis. From the state capitol here in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for listening to Then There's California.